Hello everybody, welcome to the Marauders Guild, and it is Friday, meaning it is time for another episode of Mando Recap. Today we're going to be looking at Chapter 12, The Siege. Now in this episode we pick up where we left off. Mando is en route to the planet of Corvus as he is searching for Ahsoka Tano in order to take the child to her. However, he realizes that his ship, the Razor Crest, is in no condition to make it to that planet. So he decides to stop off at a planet we're all too familiar with from the first season, Nevarro. Upon arriving, he sees the area is sprawling with life. There's schools, it is a bustling market, and we get to see Magistrate Greef Karga and Marshal Cara Dune. Now he goes here in hopes of getting his ship fixed, but of course they need some sort of help with what's happening on Nevarro. That is with an old Imperial base that Greef Karga believes is basically abandoned. And his fear is the weapons that are left in that base are going to draw criminals there and in turn make his area not as safe as it could be. He asks Mando to help him get rid of this base, and when they get there they realize the base is not isolated, it is not abandoned, it is a fully operational, fully stocked Imperial base with something important going on there that we'll discuss later on in this video. So Mando and Greef Karga, Cara Dune, and Mithril, who also remember from the first season, who was Mando's first bounty target we see him take in the first episode, they all storm this base, destroy it by making the lava systems within it erupt. It detonates, but then again, like I said, there was some secret stuff that we got to see. Now at the end of this episode was something very interesting. We see that as Mando is leaving, one of the mechanics that worked in his ship was a spy for the Empire, and they planted a tracking device on the Razor Crest, so they now know where he is, and more importantly, they know where the child is at all times. And it is really crucial where they know where the child is. So let's get into it. Let's talk about what really happened in this episode that's going to be the basis of this video. So there was a moment in which we see them storing the base, and we see Imperial scientists working in a chamber room purging their data. Anytime you see the Empire purging data or mentioning purging data, it is something related to what is going on in the Outer Rims. In the Aftermath books, we saw that a lot as well. Imperials purging data or destroying bases to make sure any information they had gathered was lost in the process. No one could get their hands on it. The only thing that our heroes were able to see was a recording from a scientist that we also saw in the first season, talking about the specimen in which they're trying to create, making a body that has a high M count. Now you might be wondering, what exactly is an M count? Well, I believe it is the metachlorian count. Now if you aren't aware of what metachlorians are, they don't really talk about them in Star Wars anymore. It is a weird phenomenon in actuality. It was first brought up in episode 1. We saw Qui-Gon talking about it to a young Anakin. Metachlorians are essentially like your power level, I guess you could say, when referring to the Force. If you have a high metachlorian count, you should have a high connection to the Force. Now that does not mean you'll be wise in using it. That's all according to how you learn how to use the Force. But you will have a strong connection. Like for instance, Anakin had an incredibly high metachlorian count. Obi-Wan, on the other hand, did not have a high metachlorian count. So that's something to kind of phase yourself with. And the child was their specimen. It had a metachlorian count they were using, and they were trying to extract it into the body of whatever. Now what I believe we are seeing is the Empire's early processes in trying to clone Emperor Palpatine, or maybe even the process of creating Snoke. That's what I think we are seeing right now. I can't think of any other cloning ability they would need a Force user to use. So I think this is the key that connects the Mandalorian story to the sequel films, to episode 7, 8, and 9. We could be seeing the creation of Snoke or the cloning of Palpatine in this very moment. Keep in mind, this is about 5-6 years after the fall of Endor, New Republic standing tall, things of that variety. And they know that something big's happening. Like for instance, at the end of the episode, we see that New Republic officer coming out and he says he knows something big is happening in the Outer Rim, but the core worlds don't want to mention it. What does that mean? Well, like I said, if you've read the Aftermath books, which if you have not and you find yourself a fan of The Mandalorian, I highly suggest that you do, because this show has so many elements that are in those books. They rewrit some stuff, but it's mostly the interludes. The main meat of the books still holds true, rather, I should say. And there's a lot going on with the Empire at this moment. I'm not going to go into it too much should anybody wish to really read those books, but the Empire at this moment, they're selling on Jakku. I think everyone knows that. If you play Battlefront 2 as well, you know that the Jakku situation is going on with the Empire. There's a lot of secrecy going on behind closed doors. So in that regard, people, I beg you, go check out the Aftermath books, because we're getting into really big territory here. If this theory is true, if this is the Empire's process in cloning Palpatine or creating Snoke for what would be the First Order's period of reign in the galaxy. But furthermore than that, I mean, there's also a really scary situation at the end of the episode where we see Moff Gideon on his cruiser, and he's in this room where he's like, yo, we'll be ready. And it zooms out and you see all these troops. And you can't really make out what they were. We know they're wearing black armor. And there's two types of troops that wore black armor in the Empire that looks like they could be of that size. Obviously, there is the Death Trooper. He had Death Troopers in Season 1. This could be him having them more in stasis, something like that. I saw some people actually suggest they could be new types of Purge Troopers. Now, if you don't know the Purge Trooper, I'm not referring to the ones from Legends, the ones that you would see in Force Unleashed, or the big robotic stormtroopers. Not those that would be cool. But the Purge Troopers that you see in Jedi Fallen Order, the ones that used to be the last batch of clone troopers left in the Empire that were specifically trained to hunt and kill Jedi. These could be a new batch of Purge Troopers that Moff Gideon just had prepared for whatever situation. But I'm leaning more towards them being Death Troopers, because they did look to be more than 6 feet tall, and that was like literally one of the ramifications that you had, the prerequisites rather, that you had to have in order to be a Death Trooper, was be at least 6 feet tall. So I'm gonna lean more towards the Death Trooper thing here. But back to the main topic of discussion, back to this M-count deal, the cloning deal with the Empire. This is a big thing. Now, I'm not saying this will be a major plot point moving forward in the show. We've seen that they don't really, what's the best way to describe it? They don't really stay on track with certain things they bring up, like Boba Fett. I wouldn't be surprised that's the only time we see Boba Fett this entire season, and maybe he comes back in Season 3. But they don't necessarily stick with every plotline. They might go to something, tell a story there, and they might bring it back later, or they might never talk about it. But I highly doubt they're never going to talk about this, or we might see a reference at some point later in the season what's going on here, and maybe next season as well. But this is something to keep an eye on. M-counts, obviously I think that's going to be I think we can all agree that they're referencing midichlorians there. They're cloning somebody. Could be Snoke, could be Palpatine. It's something that I can't wait to see get elaborated on. But I want to ask all of you, what did you think about that little moment in The Mandalorian? Did you think it was something concerning Snoke, Palpatine? Do you think they're trying to make a new individual altogether that's well versed in the Force as a weapon for the Empire? I think that is a possibility as well. I would love to know your opinions about it. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, ring that bell to get notified about every upload here on the channel. And until the next time, may the Force of others be with you.